The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of alien beings filled the massive space, their voices creating a symphony of strange sounds. Some chirped like birds, others hummed like machines, and a few spoke in musical tones that seemed to float through the air. Ambassador Chen walked slowly down the center aisle. His black suit looked simple and plain compared to the colorful robes and shimmering armor worn by the alien delegates around him. Behind him, 3 other humans followed. They carried briefcases and data tablets, their faces calm but nervous. The humans had waited 2 years for this moment. 2 years of sending messages across space, begging for a chance to speak. 2 years of proving they were smart enough to understand galactic politics. 2 years of showing they could build ships that traveled between stars. Now they were here. The first humans ever to stand in the Galactic Council chambers. Admiral Zexthera rose from her throne-like chair. She was 12 feet tall, with blue skin that sparkled like jewels. Forearms moved as she spoke, each gesture making her golden bracelets sing like wind chimes. Her voice boomed across the hall without any need for microphones. Today, we welcome a new species to our chambers, she announced. The humans of Earth have requested membership in our great alliance. A wave of chittering and buzzing swept through the crowd. Chen could not understand most of it, but his translator device picked up words like primitive and young and cute. Zexthera gestured toward the humans with one of her 4 hands. They claim they can help defend our worlds. They say their military forces are ready to fight alongside ours. The hall erupted in what could only be described as laughter. It came in many forms. High-pitched squeaks from the mouse-like skitters, deep rumbling from the rock creatures called Granite Lords, electronic beeping from the robot race known as the Collective. A delegate from the Vorthok Empire stood up. He looked like a giant insect with too many legs and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. When he spoke, his words came out as clicking sounds that the translators turned into human speech. "What weapons do these humans bring us?" the Vorthok asked. "Do they have plasma cannons that can melt mountains? Do they carry antimatter bombs that can crack planets?" Chen stepped forward. "We have nuclear weapons," he said simply. "We have missiles that can travel very fast. We have ships with thick armor and powerful engines." The laughter grew louder. Somewhere in the crowd, a voice called out, "Nuclear weapons! How adorable!" Another delegate spoke up. This one was made of pure energy, a glowing blob that changed colors as it talked. "We used nuclear power for our children's toys 1,000,000 years ago. What else do you offer?" "Our soldiers are well trained," Chen continued, his voice steady despite the mockery. "We have fought many wars on our world. We understand tactics and strategy." "Wars against themselves," shouted someone from the back. "They still fight their own kind." Zexthera raised 2 of her hands for silence. The noise slowly died down. "Tell us about your fastest ships," she said, her tone suggesting she was trying not to laugh. Chen's assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim, stepped forward. She activated a holographic display that showed Earth's newest spacecraft. "Our fastest ship can reach 15% of light speed," she said proudly. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the laughter. Then it started again, even louder than before. A delegate who looked like a floating crystal spoke in tones like ringing bells. 15%? Our cargo ships move faster than that. Our children's racing pods could outrun your warships. How do they even get between star systems?" asked another voice. "Do they hibernate for centuries?" Dr. Kim's face turned red, but she kept speaking. "We use jump drives. They let us fold space and travel instantly between stars." "They can fold space," said the Vorthok delegate, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "How many jumps can their ships make before the drives burn out?"
"Ouch. 5 or 6, Dr. Kim admitted. The laughter reached new heights. Some delegates were actually falling over.
The Granite Lords made sounds like mountains crumbling. The energy beings flashed so brightly it hurt to look at them. Admiral Zexthera seemed to be enjoying herself. "And how many ships does your great fleet contain?" she asked. "We have built 300 space-worthy vessels," Chen said. "With more. Under construction, 300, gasped a delegate who looked like a walking tree. "The Vorthok Empire has 300,000 ships in just one of their patrol fleets. Perhaps, suggested a voice from somewhere in the crowd, they could help by carrying supplies. Their little ships might be useful for moving food and medicine. Entertainment, added another. We could watch them try to fight. It would be quite amusing. Chen felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to stay calm. We know we are new to space travel, he said, but we learned quickly. We adapt. We survive. Survive. The Vorthok delegate's eyes glowed brighter. Young species, you have no idea. What survival means? The galaxy is full of dangers you cannot imagine. There are enemies out there that could destroy your entire world without even slowing down. Which is why we want to join you, Chen replied. To learn, to help protect innocent. Liv Zexthera stood again. How noble, she said, her voice filled with mock praise. The brave little humans want to protect the galaxy. She looked around the hall at the thousands of delegates. All in favor of granting these humans full membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance. Not a single hand, claw, or tentacle was raised. All in favor of postponing their application until they prove themselves worthy. The forest of raised appendages was overwhelming. Ocean carried, Zexthera announced. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when you have proper weapons and ships, we can discuss this again. Chen bowed slightly. We understand, he said. Ow. Offer stands. If you ever need help, Earth will answer. The laughter followed them all the way out of the chamber. 6 months had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council in shame. On Earth, the governments worked harder than ever to build better ships and stronger weapons. They knew the aliens were right about one thing. The galaxy was dangerous. They just did not know how dangerous it really was. The first reports came from the outer edge of known space. A mining colony in the Zarian system had gone silent. When the Vorthok Empire sent ships to investigate, they found nothing but empty space where 3 planets used to be. Not destroyed, gone, completely missing. Admiral Zexthera stood in the Emergency Council session, her forearms moving frantically as she spoke. The colony had 50 million workers, she said. 3 planets with full ecosystems, all of it just vanished. The holographic display showed the Zarian system. Where 3 worlds should have orbited their star, there was only dust and debris. Even the mining stations that floated in space had disappeared. What could do this? Asked the Granite Lord representative. His rock-like body trembled as he spoke. What weapon can make entire planets disappear? Before anyone could answer, another message arrived. Then another. System after system was going dark along the galaxy's edge. Each report told the same terrible story. Everything simply gone. The collective's robot speaker rolled forward on metal wheels. Its electronic voice was filled with static from fear. We are detecting massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace. Multiple contacts, all heading toward populated systems. How massive? Zexthera demanded. Each one is the size of a small moon. The council chamber fell silent. Moon-sized ships meant only one thing. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories. The ancient warnings passed down through millions of years. The Devourers had returned. 3 days later, the first visual contact was made. A hegemony patrol fleet had found them in the Kappa sector, a swarm of biomechanical nightmares that defied description. The ships were alive, growing and changing as they moved. They had mouths full of metal teeth that could bite through asteroids. Their hulls were made of some kind of living metal that healed itself when damaged, and they were hungry. The patrol fleet's last transmission showed the Devourers feeding. They attached themselves to planets like parasites, extending massive tubes that sucked up everything: rock, metal, water, air, life. In hours, they could strip a world down to its core and use the matter to build more of themselves. The hegemony's greatest admiral, Corvex the Brilliant, led a fleet of 2,000 ships to stop them. His vessels were the most advanced in the galaxy, equipped with plasma weapons that could melt continents and shields that could stop anything. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When the energy storms cleared, Admiral Corvex and his entire fleet were gone. The Devourers had added their metal to their own hulls and continued toward the next. System panic spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The collective tried to coordinate a defense using their robot armies. The energy beings of the ethereal assembly combined their powers to create weapons of pure force. The Vorthok Empire sent their largest ships, mountain-sized dreadnoughts that had never known defeat. All of them failed. The Devourers were too fast, too strong, too hungry. They moved through space like a plague, leaving empty systems in their wake. Billions died. Entire civilizations that had existed for millions of years were consumed in days. The Galactic Council met in emergency session every hour. Arguments filled the chamber as different species blamed each other for the disaster. The Granite Lords wanted to retreat to the galaxy's core and build defenses. The collective suggested sacrificing the outer worlds to slow the enemy down. The energy beings spoke of fleeing to other dimensions. Admiral Zexthera looked older than her 1,000 years. Her blue skin had lost its sparkle, and her golden bracelets hung silent on her arms. "We need every ship, every weapon, every soldier," she said. "The Devourers will not stop until they have consumed everything." "What about the other species?" asked the Vorthok delegate. "The ones that refused to join us?" "Dead," Zexthera replied. "The Sirius Alliance lasted 2 days. The Rigel Federation managed 3. The Devourers do not care about politics or alliances. They only care about feeding." The younger hegemony officer stepped forward. "Admiral, there is one group we have not contacted." "Who? The humans?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. "Humans are useless," someone shouted. "Their weapons are toys. They cannot even build proper ships. What could they possibly do that we cannot?" Zexthara raised 2 hands for silence. She looked tired and desperate. The mighty admiral who had laughed at humanity 6 months ago now faced the end of everything she had sworn to protect. "Open a channel to Earth," she ordered. The holographic display flickered and showed Ambassador Chen sitting in what looked like a small office. He appeared calm, as if he had been expecting this call. "Admiral Zexthera," Chen said politely. "How can humanity help you?" Zexthera struggled with the words. Her pride fought against her desperation. "We are facing a threat. The Devourers have returned. Our forces have suffered heavy losses." "I see," Chen said. "And you would like our assistance?" "Perhaps your ships could help with evacuation efforts," Zexthera said carefully. "Non-combat roles. Naturally, we would not ask you to face an enemy. That has destroyed our greatest fleets." Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was firm but kind. "Admiral, humanity stands ready to defend innocent life wherever it is threatened. We will deploy our forces immediately." "Your forces?" The Vorthok delegate laughed bitterly. "What can 300 primitive ships do against moon-sized monsters?" Chen looked directly at him through the display. "We will do what we can with what we have. Earth's fleet will be at the front lines within 48 hours. Zexthera felt a strange mix of gratitude and pity. These brave, foolish humans were going to fly their tiny ships against an enemy that had crushed the galaxy's mightiest armadas. It would be a slaughter. "Ambassador," she said gently, "you do not understand what you are facing. The Devourers have destroyed fleets 1,000 times larger than yours." "Perhaps," Chen replied, "but we have something your other fleets did not have." "What is that?" Chen smiled slightly. "We have nothing left to lose. Earth out." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. Outside, the reports continued to pour in, system after system falling to the endless hunger of the Devourers. And somewhere in space, 300 small human ships began their journey toward the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the main screen with calm eyes. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. No one spoke unless they had something important to say. 300 human ships hung in space like a small cloud of metal dots. They looked tiny compared to the massive alien vessels scattered throughout the system. The hegemony dreadnoughts were each 10 times larger than Earth's biggest ship. The collective's robot cruisers bristled with weapons that could level cities. The Vorthok Empire's bioships pulsed with organic energy. All of them were running away. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Brooks from the sensor station. "I'm reading massive energy signatures near the fourth planet. The Devourers are there." Okafor nodded. Through the main screen, she could see what remained of Kepler-4 for 2D. The planet was half gone. Massive creatures the size of mountains were attached to its surface, feeding. Long metal tubes stretched from their mouths down to the planet's core. As they sucked up matter, the creatures grew larger, and more ships sprouted from their hulls. "Like fruit from a tree. How many?" Okafor asked. 57 confirmed contacts, Admiral, all of them bigger than our largest ship. Any sign of the colonists?" Brooks checked his readings again. "Negative, ma'am. Population was 12 million. No life signs detected." The communications officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from General Vex of the Hegemony Fleet. Put him through." The screen flickered and showed a reptilian face covered in scars. General Vex had been fighting wars for 300 years, but now his eyes showed only fear. "Human Admiral," Vex said, his voice shaking. "You must retreat immediately. Those are Devourers. They have already consumed 17 of my ships." "Many ships do you have left, General?" Okafor asked. 234. We had 500 when we arrived, I see." "What's your plan?" Vex blinked in confusion. "Plan? There is no plan except to run. These creatures cannot be fought. They absorb our energy weapons and grow stronger. Our shields mean nothing to them. General, we're going to engage the enemy. I recommend you move your ships to a safe distance and assist with civilian evacuation." For a moment, Vex said nothing. Then he started laughing. But there was no humor in it. "You cannot be serious. You have 300 ships. I lost more than that in the first 5 minutes of fighting." "Then we'll make sure not to repeat your mistakes," Okafor said calmly. "You don't understand," Vex shouted. "These aren't ships you can fight with tactics and strategy. They're living weapons that eat everything in their path. Your primitive kinetic weapons will do nothing against their bioarmor." "We'll see about that," Okafor replied. Defiant out. The transmission ended. Around the bridge, the crew continued their work. No one seemed worried about the impossible odds they faced. "All ships. This is Admiral Okafor," she said into her microphone. "Target the creatures attached to the planet. We're going to stop them from feeding." The human fleet began to move. Unlike the massive alien ships that lumbered through space like flying buildings, the human vessels moved with quick, precise motions. They arranged themselves into small groups of 10 ships each, spreading out across the system. On the other side of space, the Devourers noticed the new arrivals. 50 creatures detached themselves from the dying planet and began moving toward the human fleet. Each one was the size of a small city, covered in living metal that rippled like water. Weapons grew from their holes as they approached, biocannons that could fire bursts of pure destruction. General Vex watched from his command ship, unable to look away. "Fools," he whispered. "Brave, stupid fools." The first Devourer opened fire when it was still 1,000,000 kilometers away. A beam of green energy lanced across space toward the lead human ship. The humans did something no other species had ever tried. They didn't raise their shields. Instead, the ship rolled to one side, and the beam missed completely. "Impossible," breathed Vex. "No ship can move that fast." But the humans were just getting started. As more Devourers opened fire, the human ships began to dance. They twisted and spun through space, avoiding energy beams that should have been impossible to dodge. Their ships weren't built for comfort or elegance. They were built to survive. The Devourers quickly realized their long-range weapons were useless. They began to close the distance, planning to use their massive bulk to crush the tiny human ships. That was exactly what Admiral Okafor had been waiting for. "All ships, weapons free," she ordered, close to attack range. The human fleet charged. Forward. At 50,000 kilometers, they opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen used in space combat. Magnetic railguns launched metal slugs at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles rode pillars of fire toward their targets. Chemical explosives and kinetic penetrators filled the space between the fleets. The first devourer to be hit stopped moving. A railgun slug had punched completely through its bioarmor and out the other side. Green blood leaked from the wound. Like a river, direct hit, called out Lieutenant Brooks. Target is showing massive internal damage. Confirmed, said another voice. The creature is trying to heal itself, but the damage is too severe. General Vex stared at his screens in shock. In 5 minutes of fighting, the humans had done more damage to a devourer than his entire fleet had managed in hours. But the real surprise came when the devourers tried to absorb the human weapons. Energy weapons they could drink like water. But kinetic weapons were different. Metal slugs and explosive missiles didn't carry energy to be absorbed. They carried momentum and destruction. When a devourer tried to absorb a nuclear warhead, it simply exploded inside the creature's body. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships worked together like a single organism, each one covering the others. When a devourer tried to grab one ship, 5 others would attack its flanks. When the creatures formed up to concentrate their fire, humans scattered and regrouped somewhere else. Admiral Okafor watched the battle with the eyes of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for war. Target their feeding tubes, she ordered. If we can stop them from eating, we can stop them from growing. Human missiles began targeting the long tubes that connected the devourers to the planet below. Each hit caused tremendous damage, and the creatures began to pull back from their feeding positions. For the first time in galactic history, the devourers were losing a battle. General Vex opened a channel to the human fleet. Admiral Okafor, how are you doing this? Simple, Okafor replied as another devourer exploded under human fire. We're not fighting their war. The battle had been raging for 6 hours. What started as 50 devourers attacking the human fleet had turned into something no one expected. 37 of the massive creatures floated dead in space, their biometal hulls torn apart by human weapons. Admiral Okafor stood on her bridge, watching her ships work with deadly precision. The humans had lost only 12 vessels, and most of their crews had been rescued by other ships. It was a victory ratio that defied everything the galaxy knew about warfare. Admiral Cold, Lieutenant Brooks, long-range sensors are picking up massive hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. How big? Okafor asked. 12,000 contacts, ma'am? All Devourer class. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Even the humans, who had been winning against impossible odds, felt the weight of those numbers. 12,000 creatures, each one capable of eating planets. Well, said Commander Yates, the ship's second officer, at least we'll have plenty of targets. Despite everything, several crew members smiled. It was a very human response to overwhelming danger. Make a joke and keep fighting. General Dex's voice crackled over the communication channel. Human Admiral, you must retreat now. The main Devourer fleet is coming. Your victories here mean nothing against those numbers, General Okafor replied. How many civilian transports are still in this system? About 300 ships carrying refugees from the outer colonies. They need more time to reach safe jump distance. Then we'll buy them that time. Admiral Okafor turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need every ship they can spare. Full military deployment. Ma'am, that will leave Earth defenseless. If we lose here, Earth won't matter anyway. The human fleet began to reorganize. The surviving ships formed into smaller hunting groups, each one led by an experienced captain. They had learned valuable lessons in the past 6 hours about how to fight devourers. Now they would need to use every trick they knew. The main devourer fleet arrived like a storm of living metal. Thousands of biomechanical nightmares dropped out of hyperspace, each one hungry for destruction. They were larger than the scouts that had attacked first. Some were the size of small moons. Others stretched for hundreds of kilometers like massive serpents. But the humans had prepared a surprise. All ships, execute pattern Delta, Okafor ordered. The human fleet scattered in all directions, moving faster than anything the devourers had seen. These weren't the lumbering giants that other species use for warships. Human vessels were built for speed and maneuverability, designed by a species that had learned to fight. In the deadly environment of their own world, what happened next became known as the Swarm Doctrine. Instead of meeting the Devourers head-on, in a massive battle, the humans broke into tiny groups that attacked from every direction at once. They hit and ran, striking at weak points before disappearing into space. Human fighters, small single-pilot craft that other species considered useless in space combat, proved their worth. They could accelerate and turn in ways that would kill. Most alien pilots pulling forces that would crush bones and burst organs, but humans had evolved under Earth's heavy gravity, and their bodies could handle stresses that would destroy other life forms. Captain Maria Santos led Fighter Squadron 7 in an attack on a massive devourer that looked like a metal whale. Her 12 fighters moved like angry wasps around the creature's hull, targeting the organic joints where its weapons connected to its body. "Target the neural clusters," Santos ordered her pilots. "Hit them where they think." The fighters unleashed streams of depleted uranium bullets, each one designed to punch through the toughest armor. The Devourer tried to swat them like insects, but the human pilots were too fast and too clever. They used the creature's own size against it, hiding behind its weapon turrets and attacking from blind spots. Meanwhile, Admiral Okafor led the main fleet in a series of devastating strikes against the larger Devourers. Human ships would appear from behind asteroids or the wreckage of dead creatures, fire everything they had, and then disappear before the enemy could respond. "Nuclear torpedoes away," reported the weapons officer aboard the UES Defiant. A-6 missiles streaked toward a Devourer that was trying to attach itself to a nearby moon. Each torpedo carried a 50-megaton warhead, small by galactic standards, but perfect for what the humans had in mind. The missiles didn't try to penetrate the creature's armor. Instead, they detonated just outside its hull, creating massive electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the bioelectrical systems that kept the Devourer alive. The creature convulsed and went still, its weapons falling silent. General Vex watched in amazement as the humans systematically dismantled the Devourer. "Fleet? How are they doing this?" he asked his science officer. "Sir, they're using primitive weapons in ways we never considered. Their kinetic attacks can't be absorbed or redirected like energy weapons. And their tactics, they fight like a pack of predators, not like a military formation." Okay. On Earth, the emergency production facilities worked around the clock. Factories that had been building civilian spacecraft switched to making warships. Weapons that had only existed on paper were rushed into production. The planet's entire industrial capacity was focused on one goal: saving the galaxy. Reinforcements began arriving from Earth every few hours. Each wave brought new ships and fresh crews, along with weapons that the Devourers had never seen before. Gravity bombs that could crush a creature's internal organs, virus missiles that infected biometal hulls and made them turn against their owners, quantum entanglement mines that could tear holes in space itself. But the most effective weapon was the humans themselves, fought with a determination that amazed the watching alien fleets. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their weapons ran out, they rammed their vessels into Devourer hulls. When all seemed lost, they found new ways to attack. Captain Zheng Wei of the UES Wolverine made the ultimate sacrifice when his ship's engines were destroyed by Devourer fire. Instead of abandoning ship, he ordered his crew to the escape pods and manually piloted his damaged vessel into the mouth of a feeding Devourer. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also showed the other Devourers that humans would never surrender. As the hours passed, something incredible happened. The Devourer fleet, which had never known defeat, began to retreat. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered prey that fought back more effectively than they could consume it. Admiral Okafor received reports from across the battle zone. "Admiral, Sector 7 is clear," Squadron 12 reports. 17 Devourer kills. Fighter Wings 4 through 8 have eliminated the creatures threatening the civilian transports. "Casualties?" she asked. 43 ships lost, ma'am. but we rescued most of the crews. Okafor looked at the tactical display. Of the 12,000 devourers that had attacked, fewer than 3,000 remained. And those survivors were no longer advancing, they were running.
All ships.
Pursue and destroy, she ordered. Don't let any of them escape to threaten other worlds. The human fleet, now reinforced to over 800 ships, began the final hunt. They chased the remaining devourers across 3 star systems, fighting running battles that left trails of wreckage floating in space. In the end, it wasn't even close. The creatures that had destroyed entire civilizations were completely outmatched by a species they had thought was primitive and weak. The final battle began 3 days after the first devourer defeat. Admiral Okafor stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching as her fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be the last fight. The surviving devourers had gathered in the dead Zeta Reticuli system, calling for reinforcements from the dark spaces between galaxies. Admiral Lieutenant Brooks reported, "Sensors show massive hyperspace distortions. Something enormous is coming through." The space around Zeta Reticuli began to tear open. What emerged defied description, a creature so large it had its own gravity field. It was the Devourer Queen, the mother of the swarm, a being that had consumed entire star clusters across the universe. "My God," whispered Commander Yates, "that thing is bigger than Earth's moon." The Queen was accompanied by what remained of the original fleet, plus thousands of new creatures that had answered her call. They filled the star system like a plague of living metal, their biomechanical bodies pulsing with hunger and rage. General Dex's voice came over the communication channel, filled with despair. "Admiral Okafor, this is hopeless. That creature has devoured entire galaxies. We must retreat while we still can." General Okafor replied calmly, "How many civilian ships are still evacuating from the inner systems? Millions of vessels carrying billions of refugees? They need at least 72 hours to reach safe jump points. Then we hold for 72 hours. Against that, Dex gestured toward the massive Queen. "It's impossible." Admiral Okafor turned to her crew. These men and women had followed her across 3 star systems, fighting impossible battles against creatures that had terrified the galaxy. Their faces were tired but determined. They knew what was at stake. "All ships," she announced, "prepare for final engagement. We're going to buy those civilians the time they need, no matter what it costs." The human fleet had grown to nearly 1,000 ships as Earth sent every vessel that could fly. Cargo haulers had been fitted with weapons. Civilian transports carried soldiers and supplies. Even the old museum ships from the War Memorial had been pulled out of storage and given new crews. They were still vastly outnumbered. But the humans had learned something important in their battles with the Devourers. These creatures, for all their power, fought like animals. They relied on overwhelming force and terror. They had never faced an enemy that refused to be frightened. The battle began when the Queen herself attacked. She opened her massive mouth and released a beam of energy that could have cracked a planet. The human fleet scattered like leaves in a storm, but they didn't run away. Instead, they regrouped and attacked from all sides. Captain Rodriguez of the U Santiago led his squadron in a desperate charge against one of the Queen's feeding tentacles. "All ships target the neurojunctions," he ordered. "If we can cut her connection to the swarm, we might have a chance." Human weapons struck the Queen's massive bulk like needles against a whale. The humans had learned to aim for the right spots. They targeted nerve clusters, feeding organs, and the biomechanical systems that kept the creature alive. The Queen roared in pain and fury. Never before had such tiny creatures caused her actual damage. She called for her children to protect her, and thousands of smaller devourers swarmed toward the human fleet. What happened next became known as the Miracle of Zeta, or Togli. The human ships began to work together in ways that amazed even their own crews. Fighters coordinated with bombers, destroyers covered cruisers, and everyone protected everyone else. They moved like a single organism with 1,000 parts. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as a weapons specialist aboard the UES Endeavour, made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral," she reported, "I've been analyzing the Devourer biosignatures. They're all connected through quantum entanglement. If we could disrupt that connection, ... What would you need? Okafor asked. Every quantum torpedo we have fired simultaneously at the Queen's central nervous system. It was an insane plan. It would require every ship in the fleet to coordinate their attacks perfectly, striking the same target at exactly the same moment. If they missed, they would have wasted their most powerful weapons. All ships, Admiral Okafor announced, prepare for Operation Heartbreak. We're going to try something that's never been done before. The human fleet began its final approach. Ship after ship launched their quantum torpedoes, the weapons that Earth's scientists had developed in just the past few weeks. Each torpedo contained a small, artificial black hole that would collapse after exactly 10 seconds. The devourers tried to stop them. Energy beams and biomissiles filled space like a deadly storm. Human ships exploded one after another, their crews making the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the mission succeeded. Captain Williams of the U.S. Yorktown was hit by 3 energy beams at once. As his ship broke apart around him, he used his last moments to manually guide his torpedoes toward the target. For Earth, he said into his radio as his ship exploded. All across the fleet, similar acts of heroism played out. Men and women who had never expected to be heroes gave their lives to protect people they would never meet. The quantum torpedoes struck the Queen at precisely the same moment. For an instant, nothing seemed to happen, and space itself began to twist around the massive creature. The artificial black holes created a cascade effect that tore apart the quantum bonds holding her consciousness together. The Queen's death scream could be heard across the entire star system. But something even stranger happened as she died. Every other devourer in the system simply stopped moving. Without their Queen's guiding intelligence, they began to drift apart like broken machines. Admiral Dr. Kim reported, "The devourers are losing cohesion. Their biometal is breaking down at the molecular level. Within hours, the entire devourer fleet had dissolved into space dust. Millions of creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for eons simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, unmade, as if they had never been real at all." Admiral Okafor sat in her command chair, staring at the empty space where the greatest threat in galactic history had been just hours before. Around her, the surviving human ships began rescue operations, searching for escape pods and wounded crews. "Admiral," her communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. The devourers everywhere have stopped. They're all just ... gone." The final tally was sobering. The human fleet had lost 300 ships and nearly 50,000 people, but they had saved trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Chen walked into the Galactic Council chambers once again, but this time he wasn't alone. Admiral Okafor accompanied him, along with representatives from every human colony and military unit. The Great Hall was silent as they approached the center of the chamber. Admiral Zex Thara stood to greet them, but her manner was completely different from their first meeting. Gone was the arrogant mockery. In its place was something that looked like awe. "Ambassador Chen," she said formally, "the Galactic Council unanimously votes to grant humanity full membership in our alliance. We also wish to discuss immediate defense partnerships and technology sharing agreements." Chen smiled politely. "We appreciate the offer, Admiral. I think you'll find that the terms of our membership will be quite different from what you're expecting." "What do you mean?" "The galaxy has changed," Chen said simply. "Humanity is no longer asking to join your alliance. We're offering to let you join ours." And in the silence that followed, every delegate in the chamber realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The children of Earth had grown up, and they were no longer interested in being mocked.